So here is a brand that has gotten pretty popular recently. The brand is called Blackcliff. And I initially tried these fragrances, I think last year when I was visiting Perfumology in Pennsylvania, and there are a couple that I really fell in love with. So I'm excited to give you my thoughts on Limewood and Mr. Pink in this double feature video, so make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin today's video, I do want to mention that if you're interested in picking up any of these fragrances, you may do so at Perfumology. This is not a sponsored video by any means, but I know that they carry the brand in the United States. I love Perfumology, and you can also sample the fragrances through their website, so you don't have to commit to buying a full bottle. But here we have two fragrances, Limewood and Mr. Pink. I'm excited to share my thoughts on these fragrances. One of them is on the citrusy, woodsy side of things. The other one is actually butyric, meaning that it's kind of smells like butter, but it's very creamy, milky, buttery, gourmand, and don't let that deter you. It's actually a really interesting fragrance in terms of the way that it's composed. So I'm looking forward to sharing my thoughts on the smell. Let's start things off with the presentation. So the first one that we'll start off with is Limewood. And of course, you think about the name lime, wood. Okay, it's going to be citrusy, it's going to be woodsy. So all of the notes are conveniently written on the back of the box. So I'm just going to read them off to you. It says lime, lemongrass, bergamot, and black pepper in the top. You have clary sage, jasmine, vetiver, and birch in the heart. And then in the base, you have oakwood, nukta, patchouli, benzoin, and sandalwood. Right in the opening, you are going to get that bright, tangy citrus. So you're going to get that bergamot, you're going to get the lime, you are going to get that lemongrass, and it adds a sort of green quality to the fragrance, this green flavor to the fragrance. You know, it's funny because Sarah McCartney, who is an independent perfumer, she utilizes lemongrass in a lot of her fragrances, some of which I own, some of which I've also had the pleasure of sampling at Perfumology, but she also tends to add a bit of vanilla to them. So in these fragrances, you have that vibe sans the vanilla. So you have that bright, lemony, citrusy lime component to it, and in terms of the woods that are conveyed in the name of the fragrance, you do have sandalwood and oakwood. Birch is probably going to give it a touch of smoke, which you do get, but it's not overwhelming. And I think I get more oakwood than I do sandalwood because, you know, sandalwood is often said to be kind of creamy and on the sweeter side of things, but I am getting something a little bit more woodsy, as in like a forest kind of a vibe. And it could be a lot of the other dark ingredients, the vetiver kind of giving it that green tinge. So I love how that vibe is kind of married with the birch and the woods and that touch of smoke and the citrus, the lemongrass, that sort of grassy component from the lemongrass intermingling with the vetiver, I think is a really nice addition. And then with Mr. Pink, oh boy, this is a really interesting fragrance. And I'm not just saying that. If you purchase a sample of this fragrance and you do just half a spray, you will see how different, how unique this fragrance is. Look at the notes. In the top, you have bergamot and yuzu. There is a citrus ingredient that you don't hear about too often. It's a Japanese citrus ingredient, tangy, zesty, so on and so forth. In the mid, you have cotton candy, butter, and saffron. In the base, you have toasted vanilla, smoke, labdanum, and oak moss. To say that this is a gourmand fragrance would be an understatement. When you think about the literal sort of denotation of that fragrance, it's something that is edible, right? That's what it means in the perfume industry. So you have the cotton candy, you have the vanilla, you have the saffron, you have the butter, you have all of these other edible ingredients, and it's so interesting because it's sweet and smoky at the same time. And that's not something you get with too many fragrances out there. Smoky, yes. That accompanied with fruity ingredients in the case of like a Creed Aventus, sure. But cotton candy, butter, and smoke? with a touch of saffron thrown into the mix. Like, this is such an intriguing yet enigmatic fragrance, and it almost seems like a cousin of Baccarat Rouge. Totally different fragrances, by the way. They smell nothing alike, but it seems like a cousin of Baccarat Rouge that did not have things handed to him or her on a silver platter, right? Somebody who had to work for their earnings, and maybe that touch of smoke adds that sort of, you know, laborious aspect to it. Not laborious in the sense of drawn out, but indulging in labor is basically what I'm trying to say. This is a really interesting gourmand fragrance. I am surprised by how something like this hasn't been done before, because you would think, you know, at some point you're going to smell everything there is to smell, right? And you're like, oh, this smells redundant, that smells reductive, this smells repetitive. And then I encounter fragrances like Mr. Pink by Blackcliff, and I'm like, this is so odd, yet it works. And so here we have two really interesting fragrances with some gorgeous presentations and crazy attention to detail, and I hope you have the opportunity to sample both of these at Perfumology. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. Now, first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, both of these fragrances are incredibly unique. Mr. Pink is the one that really blew me away in terms of just how different all of the notes are in here, and the fact that they just work so well with one another. Longevity on both is going to be about 10 plus hours. Projection is also above average. For both of these, you will get notice, especially for the first few hours of application. Versatility, I do think that Limewood would make a great formal occasion fragrance. Mr. Pink can also work really well on a date because of a lot of the sweet ingredients, but don't over apply, especially if you live in a warm climate. Both of these are unisex. Some people might argue that Limewood leans a little bit masculine, and I think both of them are really good for the colder weather. In terms of the presentation, I'm going to leave information down below, including information to the official website where you can read about the inspiration behind the bottle design and the packaging in a little bit more detail, put in ways far more eloquent than I could say it in. But my final verdict on these two fragrances is, if you're looking to check out a brand that is creating fragrances that smell different from anything else on the market, really through a lens of artistry and creating fragrances that stand on their own two legs, nothing that is inspired by this and that, and just fragrances that are super unique, I can tell why Near from Perfumology picked these up, and I think they deserve to be on the shelves of that store. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do consider supporting the channel by subscribing to it. Check out, please do yourself a favor, check out other fragrances that Blackcliff has to offer. They have quite a few, and all of them had an intriguing component to them. These just happen to be my favorites, but so what? You might try some other from the brand that you think are better than these two. So do not allow this video to limit you to sampling just these two. Try everything that the brand has to offer. Thank you for watching. Love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.